Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Representing the Resin. My name is Jameson Wellborn, and we are joined today by Kyle and Shayla of Organimelts. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I got to connect with you, Kyle, at Ego Clash this year, and you and Shayla both come very highly recommended from my good friend Hannah at Mission Hill Melts. So I'm super excited to have you guys on the show. I know you're working on some really cool stuff these days, but as we like to do, we want to start it at the beginning. So Shayla, I'm gonna pick you out. I'm gonna single you out. Why don't you tell us more about yourself? Tell us, where you're from, where you grew up.
I'm Shayla. I grew up just south of Denver, really. There's like a little suburb town there, and grew up on the mountains, snowboarding and living in the outdoors, really. Denver is like such a different scene now. So I truly grew up like with the boons right next to me and a creek and in a tree house that was very poorly built by me. And
were your parents like supportive of and like promoting the outdoor activities, or did you find yourself just naturally drawn to them?
I just 100% was never in the house. I just always would just wander out and go find mischief and people and friends, and just rolled with a solid crew of girls through the neighborhood, and we're constantly playing in the creek and getting into trouble.
That's awesome. So what was school like for you?
School was all right. The high school that I went to was fairly large, and so I switched to a different school. Graduated with 32 kids. It was a night school, so I snowboarded in the day and went to school at night, and had a job. I worked pretty early in the morning and then would go to school at night on the days that I did that. And
wow.
Yeah, it was great. I loved that school. It was perfect.
Was that by choice? Was that your parents' idea? Like, what was that? How'd that come about?
It was more of a not expelled, but you're no longer welcome at the first school. I was a troublemaker for sure, and had no problem telling people that I didn't like them, especially authority. And so the principal my junior year was like, yeah, you're just not allowed back here. And I was like, okay, but other schools in the district, she's like, you're fine, just not here. And I was like, okay. I think it was the debaking my convertible in the parking lot that really set it in.
What happened?
I debaked my car. I had a convertible, like pulled in.
Oh, it opened the top? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the final straw.
So talk to me about, cannabis. At what point in your childhood did you become aware of the plant?
I knew, like I said, growing up in Denver, I knew that you smoked weed inside and cigarettes outside. It was just a regular thing in my life. And
were your parents users, or did you have older brothers and sisters?
Yeah, my dad, he was just a partier. I would always go tailgating, CU Buffs games, things of that nature. I had a ton of uncles that were never really my uncles. So I knew what weed was like from a very young age. But I probably didn't start smoking until I was like 13. I think I was for sure 13. I stole weed from my best friend's mom. I think we tried to roll it in printer paper, now that I think about it. It didn't work, obviously. But eventually we wisened up and started buying pretty good weed. So
was that like a sort of quick development of a relationship for you between your first experience and when you were using it regularly?
I think like right away I realized that it helped me like really mentally. I am a kind of person that when I consume cannabis, I'm just like, okay, let's go. Like I get super motivated. My to-do list might be expansive and I might do 100 things at the same time, but generally they all get done. So I learned younger that it helped with my mood. It helped me focus. with anxiety, all kinds of things, and just felt so much better, and that I was more of myself, and could focus on like what I was doing while using cannabis. So I started using it just with friends just to have a good time. But by the time I was like 16, 17, I was like, no, this is medicine. This is legitimately what I need to have that like comfortable, even keel kind of mentality that helps me just get through life. So
Yeah, I think that's for a lot of us. So how were you, would you say, like, when did you become a medicinal habitual user? Like, did that happen really quickly, or did it take some time?
So I think it took some time. I think it was around probably when I moved to Breckenridge, I was 19, 20, 19 or 20. Anyways, and I moved to the mountains and kind of found this really good crew of people that liked really good weed. And I found that it helped so much more, like with like muscle recovery and things of that nature. And it just became every day, no matter what, grabbable. Not only was it like currency in the town, but it also is like something just like that I just needed like every day. So it's helped a lot. I've had a few solid tolerance breaks in between. There was a while there that I think I don't remember. It was like 3-4 years ago that I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I feel like my organs are shaking. So I didn't smoke for like a year and a half. And so now I'm back on it. Not back on the game.
So what was, I mean, you had all day to snowboard in the latter part of your high school career, and where was your headset at coming out of school? Were you looking to just head to the mountains, or what was your plan?
Yeah. Uh-huh. We actually joked about this. So I was like, I'm going to California. I'm going to go to the beach. And so I went out on a road trip with my friend and had just the worst time in LA and got the worst tattoo, and just everything was terrible. Like came home and I was like, I'm not moving to California. I need to go to the mountains. And it worked out perfectly because I dodged so much nonsense in Denver, and really got out of a lot of really sticky situations in the city. And in the mountains, it just became a family, a community, like an actual lifestyle that was like meant to be. So
Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, you were snowboarding every day. Was it towards a goal, or was it just for the love of the sport? And then were you working to support your habit of snowboarding? Or how did that work?
Yeah, we living in a mountain town like that, it was so small and there were so few women when I first moved there. So it was like, get a job, you'll pay your basic like utilities and rent. You have to get a second job to be able to eat. So I worked 2 jobs. I had one on the mountain, so I had to snowboard to and from work. It was amazing. And then after I turned 21, I was able to get a serving job. So I waited tables. It started in the afternoon at 5. So I would just snowboard all day long just for the love of the sport, just to be in the trees, hang out with my friends. I knew every single shack. I could go ride through so many shacks, like 6 in one run. And that was basically my goal, was to be in the woods all day until I had to go to work.
That's super cool. So, I mean, where was cannabis for you at this time? Were you cultivating it all, or were you around the cultivation of it, or what did that look like?
So that I don't think I had any plants up there until later on. I had a roommate that had a tent, and he's like, Shelly, you know all about weed, help me with this. And I was like, okay, sure. I was like, and I knew nothing. I was like, I knew about smoking it, but I was like very naive to it. And so that was like our real first little tent run. I think we pulled a couple ounces. It was pretty entertaining. But I didn't really get too involved until I went to Humboldt for a season and helped out on a farm out there, and then came back and I was like, I'm not working in restaurants. I've got my bills paid for a while. And so I just trimmed and hung out in the industry on that level. There's a few other farmers in the mountains that I would trim for. And then it wasn't until 2014 I got a job at a weed store. And actually, ironically, that's where he and I met, was working, selling weed at this little dispensary in Brett.
That's so cool. Okay, before I jump over to Kyle and talk a little bit about how you guys met, I want to learn a little bit more about that trip to California. Like, what were you doing out there?
Oh Lord, it was just hill life. It was intense. I, saved someone's life. You just out on the hill, there was helicopters and sketchy people, and then a few really great gems of people that we worked for. And it was like back in the day. It was 2013. It must have been.
Yeah.
So you got paid. It was $200 a pound then. So I guess it wasn't.
Did you go down with a friend, or did you go down alone, or how did you end up?
Yeah, there was a girlfriend. It was actually 3 of us and our 3 dogs. Went out there. I'm sure it was a scene. I know for sure it was a scene. And then one of the girls ended up going home, and it was just my girlfriend and I stayed out there and just for months out on the hill. And
did you get a chance to learn about the cultivation aspect, or were you just kind of trimming and kind of learning?
Yeah. One of the spots I landed, they basically were like, please help me, because they were down people. And so we were able to help in the greenhouse. We were able to help drying and defoliating and harvesting and anything that they needed. I was just like, yeah, let's go. I'm literally here. What do you need me for? So I was able to help with a bit of that. And I loved their greenhouses. Like being in there with all that flower, it was just magical.
So coming back to Colorado, you were able to kind of link up with like cultivators in the area that you knew from your previous network, or was that from the connections out in California?
The people in Colorado, it was just kind of a random. The people I worked for, literally I got back to from California and I was snowboarding, and this kid that I know was just like, oh yeah, my wife is hiring at this weed store. And so I was like, okay, I guess I could sell some weed. I was like, I know about that. And so I got a job.
And what you think when you first saw Kyle? What was your first impression?
The funny thing is I had heard about him because I had moved to another town. When they hired him, he was basically like my replacement. So I heard about this kid with dreadlocks and like this kid, Kyle, blah, blah, blah. He's selling more weed than you. And I was like, no, he's not. Like, yeah, he is.
I was,
and at a lower price. Like he is selling more weed than you, because I was a hustler there. I would sell all day. I could just crush it. I loved it. And so I was just hear about this kid all the time. And even this girl at a pita place started telling me about him. And I was like in another town. I was like, who is this guy? It was so funny. So then when I did finally meet you, I think I was moving product from a dispensary to the other dispensary to then the grow. They were like 5 hours apart in the mountains. And I was so high. I was so high. I like came upstairs in the shop and I just like grabbed my dog and just like laid down on the couch. And he just like came around the corner and he was like, hey, you need some weed? I was like, no, I'm so good. I'm so good. It's like, actually, technically, I was like, I'm your boss. Nice to meet you. I was a compliance manager for the company. And so it was pretty funny. It was just a very classic Shella and Kyle moment in order to actually meet each other.
And then how did that relationship take a while to grow, or did it happen pretty quickly?
It took a while. Yeah. Oh God, I can't even. I'm like almost embarrassed thinking about like just that time of our life. Oh Lord, we were just crazy kids.
All right, well, Kyle, I want to hear a bit from you. So, before we talk about when you guys first connected, let's take it back and tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up here in Michigan. Actually, like same Southwest Michigan area that we're in now. Grew up here, went to like a little small town school south of here. Graduated with like 96 people, so it was like real small town vibes. Lived on like a little 5-acre farm in the country. I was born in Kalamazoo, so I was born like in town and lived here until I was in like second grade, and then moved out to the country, and so kind of have like a little bit of influence from both of those areas in my upbringing, I feel like. But yeah, I went to a little school down there, and
Did you like school?
yeah, I did. I did really well in high school and stuff. I didn't. I don't know. I was just like kind of naturally like smart and did well in school. So I kind of like would goof off and like, some teachers didn't like me because of that and stuff. But I always like did well on my scores and stuff. So I don't know. It was a weird dynamic there. But like originally I was actually going to go when I was in like, I think a freshman in high school, I started having really bad migraines. And so I went to the doctor like quite a bit for that. Wound up having some CAT scans and other tests done and stuff, and couldn't figure out what was going on. And I went through a bunch of different medications. And finally, I think it was my sophomore year of high school, they were finally just like, oh yeah, here, we're just going to put you on Loratab, which is like an opiate. And I was 15 at the time, like a pretty heavy dose. And like, luckily I was smart enough to like research it a little bit and figure out that like, whoa, like I don't want to be doing this all the time, and that's kind of what, like I had found cannabis before that, but that's what really like led me to a real like connection with it.
Interesting. So, I mean, what was your relationship like prior to realizing that it might be a solution to what the problems that you're encountering? Like, were you using it regularly prior to that, or was it not until?
No, not really, man. I was like, I don't want to say like anti it, but I definitely was more like, not like, oh, I don't think I want to like, this is when I was younger and stuff, even in like middle school. I was like, I didn't think I wanted to like, I was like, I don't want to be like a burnout stoner or whatever, because that's like how my dad was the head of probation and parole, and like my mom worked for the schools and stuff. So they were obviously not like pro weed. So that's like the influence I had from that. And like, I wanted to go into pharmacology. I wanted to get into the like compounding side of medicine.
At what age did you decide that you wanted to like what? Like
probably like when my freshman and sophomore year, I was pretty focused on it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
usually freshmen and sophomores are focused on far different things than.
And then like my junior year, I started taking college classes at my like local community college, because they offered a program where we could like, for the last 3 or 4 hours of the day, like go and take 2 classes a week, and they'd pay for it. So I was like, oh sweet, I'll go get some free college credits. And so I started taking like chemistry, just like stuff that I wanted to learn about too.
Are you just naturally inquisitive, or were there certain things in your childhood that sparked those interests?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think just naturally inquisitive, man. I just want to know like how stuff works and like what, I don't know. And then like when I started getting migraines and stuff is when I was like, no, I want to figure this out. Like if no one else can figure it out, I want to figure out the drug to figure it out. You know what I mean? So, and then when I realized, when they were just like, oh, here's Loratab, I was inquisitive about that too. And I was like, what is this? And started researching. And I'm like, why are they giving this to a 15-year-old as a 15-year-old, And so, yeah, that just kind of made me look into marijuana more. And then, I started trying it, and I realized that like, it wasn't helping with my migraines, but I noticed a decrease in my, how frequency I was getting them.
Yeah.
So then once I turned 18, as soon as I turned 18, I got my med card and found a caregiver.
Were you able to like fully address the migraine issue ultimately?
Yeah. I mean, I still occasionally will get like this same kind of headache, but it's really rare now. And I don't know, like from what doctors have told me and stuff, it's something that especially in like males you can outgrow. It's like a pubescent thing. So like when you're growing, you'll go through them. So it could be that as well. But I do know it did help with like the frequency I was getting them, and I got some relief if I was having a migraine and smoked. But
so where was your head at coming out of high school, or I guess after you found that relief from smoking, and did you feel like that closed doors for you because you started using cannabis and you had this preconceived notion of being a burnout and things like that?
No, not really, because I feel like I kind of saw through that pretty quickly.
True.
Like I met other people that were using cannabis that were not, that stereotypical burnout. And I was just like smart enough to be like, no, that's stupid. Like, that's not how it is. Like, you're burnout for other reasons. You just happen to smoke weed,
100%. Yeah.
So, no, but I didn't like think about it in a career sense, really. At that point, I was still like, I'm going to go to school. And, I don't know, try and figure out what I want to do from there.
Still pharmacology?
No, I switched it up from there, but so I started just going to, this community college, and I was just going to get like an associate's to then transfer. And so I was like undecided for way too long because I kept like just taking classes that interested me. And then like I'd switch it up and take something else. And then like, I don't know, man. So I wound up having like a ton of college credits, but no degree because they were all just random. Like, I think it's like 64 or 68 credits, but like,
you like maxed out on your credits.
Yeah, they wouldn't. Yeah.
He took so many credits that he like maxed out, and they were like, so you can't really get a degree. What was it?
I was missing
PE
like
or
I
think it was like a physical education.
Physical to get my like associates to then, and I was like, all right, well, I'm just done then. I figured it out now. I know what I want to do.
So what was it that got you to figure it out? Was it, what did you figure out through all those courses?
So yeah, I mean, I guess it happened when I moved out to Colorado. Like I had, like I said, so I had, once I turned 18, I got my, my medical license here or whatever, and then got a caregiver who is New Coast Nectars actually now, another great hash maker here in Michigan. He was my first caregiver, and he really showed me like good weed. And so like I got more into it, and he showed me a lot more about like, I don't know, we made hash together, and like showed me stuff in the grow and really taught me a lot about that opened my mind to that possibility. But I think it was like going out to Colorado. I was going to go out there on a ski trip with some friends, and we worked at a bar together. I was a bouncer at that time. And one of the friends that we were going out there with was coming into that bar underage. I didn't know it, but my other friend did, who was going with us. And so she wound up getting fired. And we were like, you guys just want to try and like live out there? So then we went from a week trip to like finding a place to live, and
in like a matter of like 2 weeks.
Yeah. It was like a week before we left, we decided we weren't going to come back. And then,
wow. So
yeah.
I mean, what happened once you got out there?
So once I got out there, I got found a spot to live. I was living with a buddy for a little while, got a job at a cookie shop, actually, making cookies for a while. And then, I don't know, like 6 months later, wound up getting a job at the Breckenridge Cannabis Club, the dispensary that me and Shella worked at. And that's kind of where like my so even in high school though, like through all that, I was selling weed too. Like once I figured, like junior and senior year, especially once I got hooked up with New Coast and got that good weed, so I was doing that, but not like I was like, I'm not just gonna trap forever. I gotta do something else.
Of course. So I mean, once you got into that dispensary, and it kind of felt more like, hey, I can do this out in the open. Like,
like
did it come natural?
I got in a legal state. It was 2014, so it was like just legal there. And And so like once I got into that, I kind of saw the opportunities, and I was like, okay, if this is happening and working this well here, it's going other places. Like that's really when it opened my eyes to like, this is going to be, there's a lot of opportunity here. Yeah.
That's awesome. And so how long were you working at the dispensary before you met Mrs. Omelts? Mrs. Omelts?
So I
think, okay.
A couple months at least before you came back down or to Breck.
Yeah. Because I was out there for the whole summer.
Yeah. It was a couple months at least.
Yeah.
And then we worked together for
time is very like irrelevant in the mountains. It was either summer or winter, and so we just like don't.
And you were just kind of always like partying.
It was a huge party town. We would send it, that's for sure, in so many different ways. But I think it was like the end of the summer. It must have been around September.
Yeah, and I think I started working there in like August. So.
Yeah, and then
in July.
We worked together quite a bit, and he was like, honestly, like people would just take one look at him and like someone would be selling someone else something, and they'd look at him and be like, "Well, what do you smoke, man?" Like, and he's like, "All of these, here you go." And like, we made tips too. Like we made really good money for what we were doing. Like people love to tip like up there, and you would crush it. It was awesome. Well, that was kind of short-lived. I mean, we only worked together for very little bit. That dispensary actually got moved off of the main strip to another side of town. There was a whole bunch of drama that way, but
there's actually a show about it.
Oh, there was a show. Oh Lord.
There's a little CNN show about it.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, so there's a show, God. High Profits, on CNN.
It's so cringy.
Yeah, it's pretty so bad, cringy. But that was the dispensary we worked at, and I think we're both in that. Actually, we are both in that.
100%. I really wanted to be the person with the blurred out face, and they wouldn't let me. Like the last day, the crew was like, "Shella, you have to sign this," and I was like, "I don't want to." They're like, "We literally say your name, like you're a part of this. You're the compliance manager, like you have to." And I was like. We were supposed to get paid.
We were, but whatever.
Never got paid for that CNN. But we moved to this other side of town, and the business kind of seemed to be not where we wanted to work really anymore. And
at that point, I had linked up with some people and got a spot probably about an hour south of there that I was commuting to. Partially with like my first like decent sized grow operation of my own. It was like a 25 lighter or something like that on a nice piece of property. So I kind of transitioned and moved south from there. Mm-hmm. That was before we got together actually.
Yeah. That was like just still friends, coworkers.
Yeah.
So how long had you been cultivating, Kyle, like from small setup? When was your first show?
I mean, I did like I said, I did a little small stuff here in Michigan, and like it was more so like helping some buddies in their grow and stuff, and then I tried to do some little closet stuff that was whatever. But that when I moved out when I got to Colorado and I found these people, they like. That was that 25 lighter was the first like real grow that I had done. And they were just like, yep, let's do it. And I was like, sweet. So I fucking started reading up and like talking to as many people as I could. And we crushed that grow, man. It was a good one.
What was the setup like?
It was pretty sweet. So it was in this garage. It was like a full garage, like it was like a 4-car, but with one walled off part. And I think I was growing in like a soil cocoa. I think it was called Coco Loco mix with like Botanigard Botanicare. Is that what it's called?
Did you have like wasn't that like a copper wire or something?
The people when we were working with were super fucking heady. And this dude like drilled a copper pole, 8-foot copper pole down into the ground. And then ran spiraled copper wire back into the grow and into all the plants to ground all the plants in the indoor to the earth. Maybe that's why
It
it
was
crushed,
heady.
dude. I need
It
to
was
do that
heady.
again. It was.
We could see that.
But
That's super cool.
No.
yeah, man. So I did that for a couple rounds, and then had some issues with my partners there. They just kind of like up and left me with it, and nothing to support it. So being like a kid at that time, I mean, I was 21. It was just like, I was like, okay, well, I can't take care of this whole property. So
Yeah.
then I came back to Breck or Alma or something. I don't know. We were up there for a while.
I think like it was probably I don't remember what year it was, but we decided that we could still get our cards for 100 plant count in Colorado at that.
Yeah, so after that grow is when I went back to Breck though, and then that's when we met, right?
No, after that grow. I mean, that's like when we like got together.
Yeah. That's when we like got together, and then we went to Durango. Are you
And
telling
then
Durango?
Yeah,
story?
then we went to Durango. That was our first like go ahead, try to have like a beautiful grow. The dreams started coming to us.
So tell me about the Durango story. What
Well, we had been together for like, I don't know, like 4 months and decided to move to, 40 acres with no electricity and no running water. And you had to like haul water at that place too. So you had to like go fill up at the well, bring it back. And we wrapped it with, fencing, everything that we needed to be caregivers. We set it up to be as legal as like physically possible. And so that signage and gates and, greenhouses and roads, like everything we built for this like property in really a short amount of time. There was like a shack that was there. That was pretty sweet.
That's what we lived in. Yeah.
What we lived in. Yeah. By like, lamplight, like the oil lamps. Oh, it was so good. I loved it. I loved it out there. And it's like Durango is very desertous in areas. It's like high desert. And so we pulled shrubs to like make a road and then built a greenhouse and dug so many holes. And again, the partner that we partnered with, we weren't seeing eye to eye with. So we bailed. We took our plants, we gave them to someone else, and we got off the property, which sucked.
Yeah, that was a hard one.
Sucked. And so we learned our lesson there again. It's really, really hard to partner with anyone and to put in so much work and time and effort. But it was for the best because I think
after that is when we
we bought the van.
We bought the van.
Oh, we lived in a van again
we
after
did so
that.
much stuff.
The van again was sick.
What kind of van?
Started falling.
It was a 1985 Volkswagen van again. Nope. It wasn't the one with like the camping, the Westie, but
so we couldn't stand it.
It did have like a pull-out bed in the back. So we came back to Michigan, bought that, drove it back to Colorado, lived in Breck in that for a while.
Yeah, it was the summertime. It was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was amazing. And then we ended up again finding someone that we wanted to partner with and make this whole. It was more on the CBD side of things, a lot more on the medicinal side, trying to. I don't even know how you describe what we were.
So it was.
I don't even know.
There was this. Man, this is a wild story too. There was this piece of equipment that they were using in oil manufacturing to clean up oil that's recovered from ocean oil spills. It's called a fiber reactor. And so there's this group that brought it to Colorado to use to make isolate. You could use these fibers to run solvents through and run crude oil through to separate individual cannabinoids. So we were able to get like THCA isolated, and this was like 2015 or 16.
Uh-huh.
So this was the first isolated THC that I knew about. It might have been like these people might have been some of the first, but so they were doing that. I know, and working on like a lot of other trace cannabinoids, smaller cannabinoids, and being able to isolate those. And the partner that we were working with had this plan to create customized therapies for certain ailments using those broken down terp or isolated cannabinoids and putting them back together in formulas for certain ailments, and then even further from there, doing like testing to see how well you break down cannabinoids and altering recipes based on that. So that was really fun. We worked on that for a while with them.
Did they approach you, or how did you find that project?
How they find two hippies in a van to help work on this?
Yeah.
It worked out really well. We literally had a friend who owned the store next to the cookie shop that he worked at when he first moved to town. And she was like this amazing woman that we loved, that still obviously still loves
still good
to this
friends
day.
With them.
And her husband is just I don't even know what you would call him.
He's just
like a hustler of all things.
Yeah, like he just does a lot of crazy business stuff, like developments, and also he's got his hands in all sorts of weird stuff. And he's the one mastermind who kind of like put that whole idea together. And it was working with the people who had the fiber reactor were definitely more academic. You know, they were using it for research and saw this pathway to be able to fund some more research for it, basically through cannabis. And so they were
I knew a lot of like the legal side of what to do with cannabis, because I was the compliance manager for the company for a couple of years, and knew more about the ins and outs than these scientists did. And then he knew way more about like the compounds of cannabinoids and what they do than any of them could even imagine. You know, what the possibilities for what their machine could do. And so it kind of was a pretty sweet setup where like we both had really strong backgrounds in what they needed in that moment. So we were pumped on it. I mean, we did a lot of work for them too. But again,
that one just like got way too big, honestly. Tried to bring it to California and like got some other partners involved, and then
and so it is.
So we moved away from that one too. We're like, all right, well.
And then I think so we moved to Longmont, Colorado. We sold the van. Everything that we owned was in the van. We put it in the house. I think we had like $500 left, and we bought a car for I think $300. And then we were people that lived in a house after that. It was great. It was awesome. And it was a sick basement in that house. So immediately we were like, yes, we're growing down here. Like, we'll have our own space. Like, it'll be so awesome. And our friends helped us set it up. They had a ton of equipment and we were super excited. And then we had a crawfish boil and just nuked our timers. Remember? And we had all of those we had the old school timers where if your power goes out, then they flip. And then I was down there, I was like doing yoga one day and like in this grow room, and I was like, why is it so hot? Why are these so crispy? What's going on? And I was like, oh my God, the timers. So we were like in flower, and the lights had just been on for like 3 days.
Just flipped them.
And I just didn't notice. I was just a rook, just a noob, and just destroyed all these plants that we had been.
Re-veg them. Whatever. And then I got another job in a dispensary when I lived in Longmont. And that's when I really got into hash. Like really when I was up in Hartselle, or when I was at that bigger grow, I had done some BHO stuff here and we got more into it there. And then I did a couple washes and stuff like in Longmont, but nothing crazy. And then I got a job at Boulder Wellness Center in Boulder, and they were always carrying like Oleo and 710 and Dab Logic, and that's when I really got in. I was like, oh man, it took me a minute because I was like, why is it so much more expensive than
but it was
hash?
So good.
And then once I started working there and like got some discounts on stuff, I was like, oh man, I'm hooked. Like I get it now. I get it. I remember smoking like the first water hash I ever had, I think, like good water hash, was 710 Labs Ghost Hulk.
Yep.
Oof. Changed my whole outlook on it.
So were you active on the forums? Were you active online? Like, how were you teaching yourself about hash?
Yeah, definitely like reading a lot online and stuff. I was more of just like a lurker than posting anything. And then like, once Instagram really became a thing, there was some decent information on there, but um like I read a couple books on growing, like when I started getting into growing. I was more like reading that way, and then some forum stuff, and then just I had New Coast Nectars as a resource for growing information, which was huge. He definitely helped me out with a lot of issues and understanding stuff when I was getting started with that. And then some other, later along the line, some other people. My buddy who runs Earthcraft and Earthstayer now, we've been friends with them since the Colorado days, and he was always in grows and bigger commercial grows, so was able to give me a lot of pointers on stuff as well and help us out. So.
I learned so much from Earthstayer. When he's out in Colorado, he's just such a knowledgeable individual. They lived in our house, lived with us for a little bit, and like seeing his grow setup and like how he was, how he ran that was incredible. It was really sweet to kind of see. I mean, how he treated soil, like his knowledge and understanding of all of that. And it's something that like we just really like had like passion for and like really wanted to like get into even more. And so we had the opportunity to like come to Michigan.
Well, let me go back real quick though. I mean, if you're like when we were doing some of the BHO stuff, I read some stuff, but looking back, I don't know, a little dicey.
I think that more than a few of us were doing a little dicey things back in the day.
A little dicey, but yeah.
So, what was your cultivation setup in that basement?
I think
the same methodology as the 20 lighter.
Just like smaller. It was just I think we just had like a 10 by 10, and then I think we had another smaller veg.
Yeah, there's two.
There are two
tents on
tents.
one side, one on the other. Yeah,
smaller veg tent, and just the same kind of thing, just smaller scale, and that was more just for the head and like to keep practice up, I guess, and keep once you start, you're like, it feels weird not having plants around. So
100%, man, I know that feeling. So what happened next?
I mean, we bailed out of Colorado. It got so expensive. We were like ready to do something and ready to buy a house, ready to try and buy a house and like kind of settle a bit, at least have like roots somewhere that we could have a grow that was like reasonable, somewhere where we could afford to,
and we're not worried about having to move, because of our lease
renting and lease and all kinds of things.
And it just wasn't really possible in Colorado. It was so expensive.
But Michigan, when we came out here, it was like perfect timing. Like really, especially for solventless and for what we wanted. So we were still really focused on CBD at that moment. And when we came out, that was like the first thing that we wanted to set up was CBD solventless.
We were looking at trying to do like washing CBD and making like a solventless CBD company. Trying to make like a smokable, something that was at least like dabbable and tasty. Because at that was like 2019, 18. So like the farm bill had just been passed here, and there was a lot, CBD was opening up a lot more, and there was a lot more breeding going on with it that I saw, that I was like, okay, well, if they could get some terpenes in this, you might be able to wash it and get something that's halfway tasty, and being able to ship it and stuff. I saw an opportunity there, and we were trying to do that for a while.
Yeah. It's kind of like where it really started.
And then,
I say where it really started, but where the best part gets to. And that's just like, us finally being able to step into like what we've been trying to do for so long. And the only way we could do it is with our own two hands.
The first run we did here was a CBD run.
CBD run.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. That was the first one we did in Michigan was CBD run, and it was awesome. It was so cool.
Like
and
an indoor hemp run. It was fun.
We just had to do it ourselves, and like for what we want and for what our dream is and like how far we want to go, like we had to start with just the two of us just doing it, and couldn't rely on someone else, couldn't rely on someone else's property and their skills or knowledge or anything like that. Like we literally were just like, let's go, you and me.
That's very cool. I don't know of many people exploring the solventless CBD space. I think there's Fox Tracks and maybe one or two other cats that are doing it, but that's really cool that you guys were looking in that area. Like, were you able to get to any like points of progress or make any observations as far as the resin?
Definitely. Yeah. So like you just reminded me, even we did a whole indoor hemp run from some, man, I can't remember who bred them, but some like mango strains and a couple other. So I had a couple lights of like CBD hemp that I washed live. And so I was able to get some like, it fresh presses nice. The heads are a lot smaller. You have to run a 25U bag to catch pretty much anything. It's between 25 and 45 was most of it. But that was just from, one run in that room. I have washed some dry cured hemp as well and found similar results. Like it's pretty small heads.
Interesting. Very interesting. So I don't want to interrupt the story. I have more questions, but we'll get into those later. So what happened after this project?
So then I started kind of washing with
what did we do?
How did it get to be like OAG?
How did it get to be where we are here today now?
There's so many things. The thing about us is like we have really just put in like such funny roundabout ways to like get where we are and like how we like did what we had at the moment. I'm just like, oh man. So I think that it was just that CBD run, and it was with like our buddy New Coast, and
I mean, I just watched that
bachelor party or something.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you like sent it at that bachelor party.
Yeah.
And he comes home and he's like, "This is what we're gonna do." Oh my gosh, I remember now. You were just like lit up about it. Had this whole conversation. And just was so inspired coming home from a bachelor party. I was like, all right, let's go.
I don't know. It just like hit me. I was like, well, why am I trying to do this with hemp? Why don't I just do this with do this for real?
Yeah.
And so I had linked back up with New Coast and then another buddy of ours and started doing some washes with them. And I went and, it's because our other buddy showed me some pictures of some trim run he had made. And I was like, that's awesome. That looks fucking great. Like, he's like, I don't know. Like, should we wash it? I'm like, yeah, let's wash it. I'll come help you wash it. Let's go. And he's like, okay. And so I was just stoked that someone was going to let me come wash for them in their cold room.
Yeah.
And so I like pushed them to start doing it. We kind of all started pushing each other towards this. Like, I was just hyping them up and being like, this is awesome hash. And they're like, okay, well, let's run it. And then we built out more space to also start producing, and we kind of formed like a collective between the three of us that was like OAG, Ordinary Average Guys, was our like first hash brand. That was us three, and then we did some stuff with that for
a while. It only took us like a couple runs to decide to wash the whole garden. Yeah. Because for a while it was like, oh yeah, like, well, you have some
like
flowers.
They were like one guy would be like, oh, we got to wash. Oh, I got one wash.
Yeah.
And
so
then
finally
our next round, we were like, no. this whole room's going to wash. I was like, I would rather smoke hash all day anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
were the cultivars that you were holding washers, or did you just get
lucky? Dude, it worked out that way. Like at the time we had papaya, 6 straw Anacut, some Tropaya, no, Tropaya was later.
It was
Kush Mints that washed awesome.
Wedding cake.
That was a little later too. We had some really good genetics and access to really good genetics that just wound up like
That's
crushing it. So
what
Banana.
how long did the like collaboration Ordinary Average Guys continue until, was it Organimelts that formed after that, or how did that come about?
Yeah.
It kind of just like it was about a year and a half or so. I think that was that we were a group, and then there was just some, again, like partnership stuff, like no hard feelings between any of us.
Yeah.
But we just kind of all went our own ways, and we formed Organimelts after that.
I think it came about like I quit like working at my regular job. I don't know. It must have been 2000. I think 22.
No.
The other way. 2020. I think I like completely quit, and I was like, I will just take over. I will do this, like work in the grow. I love it. They love me. Like I love being able to work with plants. Like I want to just be full time there. And so we just jumped in head first, washing everything, flipping rounds, just having a great time. And then it was when the last of the 3 members, like they all split, then that's when he decided he wanted to rebrand. And so we decided to rebrand and because it was just us, and like I was always a very like quiet member of like, or I was just like helping in the grow, help trim, help harvest, like help wash. But now that it's just us, like it needed to be more clearly stated that it is just us, husband and wife brand, exactly the way that like we know we can function and like work with and do. It's just a matter of kind of showing up that way too. So it was pretty sweet. It's like when like a lot of like events and things of that started happening in this area, and
the timing worked out
pretty perfect. And I think like within 6 months, Organimelts got invited to Ego Clash, so that felt pretty good.
That's very cool. So you guys primarily, or are you guys single source? Are you guys like working with other farms? How does Organimelts work today?
Well,
I'd say like 90% single source, if not more. There's a couple people I'll do some washes for here and there.
Yeah.
But it's pretty much just us. We just have a little indoor setup, and then we do have like a greenhouse that we run every season as well. Just one full term run in.
I love my greenhouse.
Yeah.
My greenhouse.
What
It took a long time to get there, I tell you what.
Are you guys pheno hunting actively, or do you usually bring in cuts? Oh, okay.
I brought in one cut, and we were so excited. We like partied at Green Sky Bluegrass, met this guy. He had the Not Mac Peaches cut. We were so excited. We got it, paid for it, and like brought it in, ran it out. Beautiful, love it. And then it turns out that
no, it's an F2. It's an F2, but there was just some drama.
We were told by someone that our flower wasn't what the actual plant was, or whatever.
It wasn't Mac Peaches. So then I just changed the name to Not Mac Peaches.
Yeah, so we ran it as Not Mac Peaches.
But that was
for a while.
That was the last cut we took.
That was it. I won't do it again. I won't do it again, because it's like we really do cherish and take really, really good care of our plants. And I love being able to say like that is like our OGKB flavor. That is like our lemon cane flavor. And like you don't have other people that are running the same thing as us.
You know,
like
same phenos
that same
at least.
pheno. Yeah. I like to say mine, but obviously it's like, you know, archive, it's really the big boys that do it, and it's their genetics. And we always will represent and say that it's their genetics, but to feel like I went through 11 plants and like grew them out and specifically chose like this one particular one and like loved and cherished it, you know, that feels really good.
Absolutely. Are you directly into the ground in your greenhouse, or are you in beds above ground, or what's the setup like?
Actually, 100 gallons, 100 gallon pots. Yeah. So I've thought about chopping them and dropping them down. I'm just nervous that they would just blow past the greenhouse walls if I did that, honestly. One was like 15 feet tall this year in a 100 gallon pot.
Wow.
They're big. I say one, but one was 15. The other one hit like around 14, 12. So
yeah, they're pretty
if
large.
I put them in ground,
I'm
would
pretty
need
sure the
a
bottom
bigger
of those
ceiling.
pots are pretty gone now, but yeah, they are in hundreds sitting above everything.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I grow some monsters out there.
What are you guys doing nowadays for feeding on your indoor?
Well, so I mean, for a long time, we've switched mediums for what we've been using. We were in cocoa for a minute, and then I wanted to replicate my greenhouse indoor, so I fully switched to soil and
Like in 4x8.
in 4x8 beds. And so I was using Earthcraft last summer in the greenhouse and natural ferments. And I really like craft blend tea from Build a Soil. I'd use that and rotate through our ferments that we make and Earthcraft. Perfect. It was exactly what we needed for them. So I'm replicating it inside here. So as long as my labs is ready soon, I've just been sitting here staring at those curds. I'm like, are you done yet? I need you. So once I get that going, and then I can start mixing our other ferments, but straight Earthcraft is incredible. It's a water soluble organic nutrient line, again, from someone that we love and trust and has been through all the same battles that we have, you know, and is finally doing it on his own, ready to rock, like amazing water soluble nutrient line. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to be using like a local to us nutrient and a small nutrient from a small business, which is like, I mean, kind of rare in this space, you know. So it's cool to support that.
What observations have you been able to make as far as how your plants express in the greenhouse versus indoor?
Oh my gosh, they're so different. They're so different. So for example, lemon cane was a pheno hunt that we did last year. I had 3 phenos of it. We put 1, 2, and 3 outside, and they tasted so different inside. I grew them inside, and it was a disaster. I was like, 2 didn't do it at all. She was just a string bean, and I should have cut her out the first week. It was so not an indoor kind of plant. 1 thrived, was beautiful. 3 had this wicked, crazy mutation that I was like, loved, and it was so ugly.
That one did great inside
it was
too.
The ugliest plant. Do you remember? It just like it looked like a monster, like how the bud structure was, and then it had this variegation that like turned in like this weird spiral. It was so ugly, and it dumped. It was the best. Yeah, and so it took me a little bit to figure out like how to grow them inside to
get that. And also as far as like the resin goes, I think the sun grown, I don't know if it's, since this is going to be like our first like living soil harvest coming up out of here, it'll be interesting to see now.
Yeah.
But the sun grown usually has like, it comes out a little bit more wet in the consistency, and it generally has some more like subtle terpenes that or flavor notes that I don't pick up on always on the indoor. There's some slight, I don't know, differences. Like the lemon cane out of the indoor lemon cane 1 out of the indoor is a little bit more like sweet candy, whereas on the greenhouse, it has a little bit more astringent gas on that back end of it from the do-si-do, I think.
Like we've had people that know the difference. Like if they're like, was this the sun grown or was this the indoor? And looking at it with my naked eye, I could tell for like the lemon cane 3, I was like, you could see the difference in like the water hash for the 3, where like you could see each.
The heads are generally a little bit bigger
with the naked eye, massive. And then for the indoor, it just looked a lot like finer, a lot smaller heads. And the flavor is just like out of this world for sun grown. It just is. I truly think it is like the best expression. And indoor is just to try to be a little bit like outdoor, but I don't think I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to replicate it. This is my experiment round where I want to try to make my flavors taste the same in both spots, and I'm gonna do it.
Are you seeing that observationally larger head represented in the bag as well when you're washing, Kyle?
Yeah, that's where definitely. That's kind of where I like picked up on it at first. A lot more in like the 120 to 159 in the outdoor stuff than you'll get in the indoor.
And that's kind of why the way that you like layer your bags too is like more specific for indoor and outdoor as well.
Definitely.
To like, just because like a lot of them we've ran before, so we'll know where the heads are at basically. And so there's like a whole science and knowledge behind that you just have in your arsenal up here.
We're headed right into the cold room for questions. So I'm always interested in bag sets. I'm always interested in makers, different styles of, how they like to set up for pulling melt versus doing other stuff. So yeah, please elaborate, Kyle, on how you like to get set up for your bags.
Yeah. So like if it's the first time I'm running something, or the first time I've ran something in a while, I'll usually do like pretty much the first wash will be like, I'll run a 220 and then 190 and then a 160 and then a 120 and then a 90, a 73 and a 45. Like just pull everything that first wash. I do
and then every single time he has to list it back to me again because for some reason I have such a hard time remembering which ones are going to go. I'm like, okay, did I get it right? Did I get it right? And I feel like I'm like, it's different every time, right?
No. So
I don't know why it's so hard for me. They're color coded.
Yeah, so I'll usually just do that on like the first run and then see where stuff's at, So I feel like I have a pretty good eye now of what I'm looking for in the bag as far as like what's going to be melt quality. And that's generally going to be in the, between 73 and 160, somewhere in like one of those layers in there. And so like I'll pull it all and get an idea of what I want. And for melt, I only do my first pull. So then after that, I'll just run everything else to 73 to 120. And then now I'll take my 45 to 119 and 120 to usually 160. I might take like first pull up to 189. I'm mixing all of those to do like a budget variety for people. That's been turning out really well.
Even the budget looks.
Wait, what?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. I'm sure the budget looks pretty fire as well. Like if you're putting all those washes in there, I wonder, but like are you always pulling melt? Like, are you guys melt smokers? Your name Organimelts, like it would.
I'll pull it if it's there every time. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I just keep it separate for sure. I'll like if I'm gonna do sometimes I'll mix some back in when I'm pressing is what I'm trying to say. Like to that 73 to 120. Sometimes I'll mix some back in, but I'll usually keep most of it out as melt or then just do some first wash 90 to 120 presses.
Are you doing much resin mixing?
I just started to a little bit more, yeah. I'm
just kind of like playing with it a lot more recently. Well,
yeah, I had done some like washes where I mix stuff in a wash. And sometimes I feel like that muddles the flavor of, I don't know, it just becomes one. And sometimes like I like to wash and then press together, the heads together, and you'll get like two distinct flavors then. Whereas when I wash the strains together, I don't get that. So that's like the way I'll mix if I mix stuff now.
And even
I try to keep it separate
too.
in the wash.
Like because we have two, like we've got a couple phenos that
like the dark
rainbow that when we had that run, there was one that like was super Belts leaning and one that was super GMO leaning. And when we wash them separate, but then press them at like a percentage together, so good.
Yeah.
Then it's like we can create the.
And so now we like when we run dark
flavor.
rainbow, we just run both phenos because and they get mixed together because that's like the expression of dark rainbow that we're looking for.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like really where, like, when we started thinking more about it, it was that dark rainbow phenos that we were blending and like deciding like what to put with what, and then like really thinking more about like other fun blends that we could do that we really like. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really opens up the palette. Like, I think we're going to see more and more of it to the point where it's going to just add unfortunately, another level of confusion because you're going to have strains.
Like, what am I tasting here? Like,
and you're going to have to remember this blend is this ratio of these strains.
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say too. Yeah. It's fun because it's like there's what was it, sour bananas blend that I did was like that banana butter breath is a peanut butter breath crossed with banana OG, so it's very like raunchy peanut butter breathy, GMO-ish, you know, shoe terps, and like that is so overpowering. So in that mix we did 75 or 80% original diesel dosing, only 20% of that. The mix still comes out banana butter breath dominant, but there's enough of the original diesel in there that you're getting to taste it, you know. And that's hard to do if you're mixing before you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You lose a little bit of control of that in that sense, I think.
Yeah, or you got to guess, you know.
Yeah,
absolutely. Are you a fan of washing in cubes or in zippered bags?
Not really. I've done it. I think they're pretty much the same as far as like yield and results go. I haven't seen too much of a difference. It's just I like hand mix with a paddle, and I like open mixing better. It kind of just feels like you're like stirring laundry when you're using those cubes.
Are you do you have a certain like pattern that you like to use with your paddle? Like
a little bit, yeah, kind of. I like to work it in a certain way, and like, yeah, it's kind of just like, not that I think it matters too much. It's more just like a rhythm thing for me to just get in a zone so I can get through the wash.
Yeah. So do you have a theory of like what is the actual action that is separating the gland from the stalk? Like, do you feel as though it's the movement through the water, the agitation against itself, or the vortex that's created?
Oh, man, I just think it's that whole the whole thing, like the vibe, just the movement, the vibration. Like I don't think there's like, I think it's all kind of working together.
Yeah.
To get that off there, whether it be the water moving through to like pull trichome heads out of crevices, or like the water actually hitting the head off there.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about that. I think it's just,
I have like a thought on that is like how we handle like our material beforehand as well, which I think makes the biggest difference.
Absolutely.
I think keeping like our greenhouse is wrapped in like a really fine micron to keep like dust out. Even the air intakes, doors, everything is this fine micron filter that like air will come through on our sides. That like keeps like our flower just looking like super clean throughout the entire summer in a completely enclosed greenhouse. And then like harvesting, being very particular, and like the size that we harvest down to is like very particular as well.
Yeah.
How we keep it frozen, like how like cold like freezers get, and then like moving straight into like the wash, I just feel like you're very particular again about like what your temperature is and like water temperature is. And that consistency, I think, is something that is so important as well. So
yeah, I feel like sometimes I play that off, but I'm pretty like picky about that shit.
No, for sure. I mean, it's those little things that make the differences when points of percentages have major impacts.
Yeah, and man, for me, it's more just like more than the percentages. It's just the quality. Like I just want I want the cleanest separation I can get. Like I want just fucking heads in that bag.
Yeah.
Like no dust, no like nothing, just heads.
Absolutely, man. Has there been any like major tricks or pieces of knowledge that you've picked up to be able to achieve those cleaner pulls throughout your learning the last few years you've been doing this?
I think it's just the little things, like it's just the cleanliness, like throughout the grow and the harvest process being cleanly, not letting there be particulate on your bud in the first place to get in your hash. And then like rinsing is huge. Like really, really rinsing. Like I want to see like the puddle of hash get smaller in my bag.
You mean like rinsing, like when you're
collecting,
it's not like okay.
Like when you're collecting the hash, like I want to see that puddle even in my 90U bag. I want to see it decrease by like 10% to know that I'm getting everything that's not supposed to be there down to where it's supposed to be. Like I don't want to like trick myself into thinking I had a bigger 90U pool because there's a bunch of 45 I didn't rinse through in there. Like that's I don't care, you know, I want my 90U to be 90U. Yeah. So that would be the biggest thing, like just be really thorough on cleanliness and rinsing.
What are your thoughts? We're seeing a lot more machine assist or machine washing vessels coming out. What are your thoughts on top agitation versus bottom agitation? Like, have you?
I'm really excited to see. Is the hashtag going to be at Moth?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Do that.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see that. We actually, when we were like OAG or with that partnership, we had an icon. We had an icon for a while. I wasn't in love with it, but I also didn't have a long enough time to play with it to dial it in. And I've seen people do good things with them. Yeah. But I do think there is something to the top down agitation for sure. I don't really know enough about it to say, but I do think it's just more gentle, and maybe for rosin it doesn't matter quite as much. But when you're getting into isolating full heads that aren't, you know, you don't want them beat up, so you do want to treat it a little gentle.
Is that like gravity helping? Like,
no, it's just
like,
the paddle
like the
comes down from the top instead of being like a vortex under it.
Yeah, because like you're pushing down from the top, so gravity still is going to pull.
Gravity definitely plays.
Yeah,
gravity plays,
I see what you're saying, because like
because in your washing machine you can pull, and then I mean for us at least, like for our
it lets them settle too. The head settle,
and then it like you drain out of the bottom of our tank. I don't know.
Are you guys doing any exposing any heat post process? Like, are you doing any jams or rosin pens, jar cures like that?
Yeah, I do like some disposables. And I'll usually just use that same, like the budget tier stuff.
Again, this is the guy that wanted to, you know, go to school for pharmacology at 18. So he plays around with it all the time. And like, I mean this in the most like loving way. Like he wants to like sit and like watch and like see how these things are going. He's like, did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this?
See that bubble?
It's amazing. He's like, now can you watch it for a minute? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it for a minute. What am I looking for though? And like I love like your excitement and curiosity that you have with it. So like, I mean, like we generally like, I mean, we cold cure for our brand, but having all these like fun, new, exciting, different ways to like get your tech like down right. And he's always changing it, like always, like, and I love that. It's like, and so you have what you know works for us, and then all these different things.
Yeah, we've been playing around with the jam, doing a little bit of that, and then the fill-in pods or whatever too. I've been using the kung fu's.
I know.
Like it's surprising. Like they don't always turn out nice, but when they do turn out nice, they can be incredible. Like,
yeah, there's some fun ones. I am definitely getting it down a little more now to where I'm gonna be comfortable doing some nicer runs and stuff. But I'll probably keep that pretty limited too. I still haven't found like a jam that I prefer over. I just love cold gear, I guess.
There's a handful. I found a handful of
I know they're out there. Mm-hmm. I'm not doubting it.
Speaking of cold cure, let's talk about fresh press.
All right.
What's your opinion? What's your thoughts?
It's I don't know. It's not my favorite. I'll like dab it. You know, I'm gonna dab it every time just to try it out. But I definitely prefer the cold cure. I think from a consumer point of view, fresh press is kind of cool because if you want to like watch it throughout the process, you can do that of curing and still get a similar result to like a large jar cold cure. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's not my favorite though. I think the terpenes develop in the cure and break down and get a little bit more subtle or like homogenize, I guess. And I just prefer that expression generally. There's a very few strains that I like the fresh press more than a cold cure, if any.
What about freeze dryers? What are your thoughts on air dried melt versus freeze dried melt?
So that's a good one. I just tried my first air dried after we got back from Eagle Clash this year. I was inspired. I just tried my first air dried in a while, and like probably since like 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And it went a lot better than 2015.
We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot.
But yeah, I feel like it taught me a lot. Like I didn't realize how quick you can get hash dry, right? So like if you have a patty that's wicked properly and frozen and microplaned and has enough surface area on it, those heads are hydrophobic, right? There's an exoskeleton that's made of waxes and lipids that isn't going to hold water. So what's holding your water in your hash is generally going to be plant material if it's wicked and microplaned. Like, so if you have good hash that you're air drying, it can get dry really quickly. Is basically what I'm getting at, because it's just the water on the exoskeleton like evaporating in the air. There's nothing like holding the moisture. So like the freeze dried stuff we did was dry before my freeze dryer run was. And I was like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That was cool.
I wonder though when you go to do that again, like you just have the cold room was at a very specific temperature. Do you run? Because then it's like, well, what was the humidity like in the air that day? Like, does that matter for how long it dries?
Yeah, I had the humidity.
Absolutely.
You have it all set?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know. I was just thinking for like the elements if it like would make a difference.
No, this guy was trying to be a pharmacologist. He's 18. Come on.
I know. Sometimes I ask questions and then I'm just like, oh yeah, that's pretty.
What are your thoughts, Kyle, on like, was it you had the same resin outside the freeze dryer as inside the freeze dryer? You consumed it. What was your opinion?
So I think that I did get some more. It's kind of like we were talking about with the sun grown versus indoor. There's just a couple more like subtleties. Some of the I think some of the more volatile terps actually stay in the head when you air dry it as opposed to putting it under pressure in a freeze dryer. There was like very subtle tasting differences where I was picking up little things that I wasn't in the other hash. Not that it was a crazy difference. I think it was pretty negligible, but I do think the visuals of air dried hash are appeasing, and it was a lot more stable at room temp. It was stable for a lot longer before it started to grease up or get melty, you know.
Are you focused? What are you setting your shelf temps at? Let's start with that for the freeze dryer.
So like I'll run them around like 40. I've ran them down. I've heard people running them super low, so I ran them down to like 0 or 5 or whatever, -5, and then up to like 55, and played around with that quite a bit. I didn't notice too much of a difference on that. What I do think a lot of people are running freeze dryers for too long, and me included, for a long time until recently. I cut my freeze drying time. Even there's some batches that will do a full freeze and cycle in like 12 hours.
Wow.
13 hours.
Why do you think that's happening? Do you think that's happening just because they're following factory settings or
Yeah, and I just think people just don't want their shit to come out under dried, so they're just like, okay, well if I run it at 18 hours, then it comes out dry every time. But then I started playing with it and getting it to where it was like, okay, this isn't quite dry. I know I need more time. Like trying to find that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did find that like finding that right spot where it's dry, but there's like a band in there where it goes from like wet to like dry to like almost too dry. too powdery, and I like it a little harder to deal with and greasy when I'm going for melt, you know.
And what observations are you making, like in the final product, when it's freeze dried to the right time versus over dried?
Yeah, so like in that, generally the 90U or whatever I'm pulling for melt will like where I'm collecting it isn't I don't generally have it in like a cold room when I collect it, because I just pull it out really quick and work with it pretty quickly. And so I kind of want it to start greasing up while I'm working with it, right? Like, as weird as that sounds, like I know I can get it to the freezer and get it frozen in time to be able to sift it out, and it's not like I don't want it to start like degrading and greasing down. But there's just like this consistency that I look for. Like it's hard to explain, man. It's like right on the edge of being like too greasy or too like oh, is this still wet or is this just greasy?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that like visual, like.
But when it is wet, it's like a hard frozen wet piece. So it's like I know it's not. I don't know. And it's you know.
But it's a dramatic difference in the outcome, is what you're saying, like compared to if you were to run the freeze dryer longer.
For longer time, yeah, it'll dry it out a little bit more. It'll be more sandy and easy, a little easier to work with, but it's not
like the texture that we really are going for.
The texture in the rosin?
No, in the hash.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I got you. I see you. But I mean, in the rosin, have you noticed a difference when that?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a lot more like wet.
Yeah.
Not as many, like not as much stuff. Pretty much most of it isn't really coming out dry at all anymore. And that was directly correlated to when I like started turning my freeze drying times down. I noticed our stuff, just like strains that would normally be like, oh, this is generally a drier, cakey.
Yeah, there was like certain strains that you would like that had a certain like look and texture to it, and then when you ran it again, it was just like had a smoother kind of look to it. I don't even know what the wet.
You guys are too funny. How do you guys calculate your hash yields?
So just like wet weight divided by hash. I usually find my hash weight, like, wet weight per gram to whatever bag. I just like to keep or like know what it is.
Food grade, or what are you including?
Well, so like
that's the thing about like our yields is like, yes, like we're like conscious about it and like from like, our wet weight like down, but we also like break apart like so many chunks of like our wash that like we're very specific about.
So it'll be like, oh, this yielded this, the 73 to 120 yielded this, 90 yielded this, and then whatever else yielded this. And like since we're not like sharing genetics very much or at all, and it's more just like the only reason, like I just figure out yields because I want to know them, but it doesn't really affect our what we keep as much as like the terps and how it grows.
For sure.
What I'm getting at, I like to know our yields, but it's not gonna. If the hash isn't good, and it dumps 6%, I'm still not gonna keep it around. Like,
but if you were decider of all things, and you wanted to set a proper standard in the community, what would your perfect vision of yield?
I think the standard would be grams per square foot.
Grams of loose resin.
Oh, I mean, yeah, or rosin, whatever you're going for. If you're going for loose resin, you know what I mean? That's or rosin per square foot.
Yeah,
because that factors in your. No. Oh,
I guess square foot.
Saleable prime product.
Because it's like, your yield per for wet weight. It's like, okay, so if this plant under the same condition grows twice as much as this plant, but it yields half as much, and taking up the same amount of grow space, like it's a wash. They're actually the same yield.
100%. 100%. And that takes a long time for some people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah,
A really long time.
for sure.
As a super scientific guy, I can tell. What are your thoughts on the future of solventless extraction? Like, we've got a tremendous amount of really sharp minds just dedicating themselves to this day in and day out, yourself included. Do you see that there's a lot of innovation coming in the way that we're going about these practices, or do you feel as though we're just going to further refine the traditional practices that have been passed down for many, many years now?
I think there's going to be a lot to come. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. I think we're just getting started, man. Like, this is such a young, I mean, not like you said, it's been around for thousands of years, but we're really just diving back into solventless, right? And like exploring new technologies. And like, we've only been utilizing freeze dryers for how many years, you know? It's like, that's still a new technology to us. So like, I think there's going to be a lot. And I think, like on the consistency side of things, like, yeah, I prefer fresh, or I prefer cold curing stuff, but I don't think it's healthy for anyone to be like knocking other people for what they're doing, because that is what's driving all of us to find these new and like exciting ways of doing things, you know? Like, that's what's leading us to new consistencies. And like, there's so much out there we don't know. You don't know what you don't know, man. It's like, I don't know. It gets me excited. Like, I'm really excited about new consistencies and new flavors and breeding, like new strains that are going to come out, new flavors that might develop out of that. Like,
it's interesting because like when we first got into like, you know, back in the CBD, you know, wash world, like there was very little. Like I remember specifically like being like, what's on YouTube? Like, and like then it was a very secretive kind of culture where people didn't sit and talk about this like on podcasts until really in like the last couple years, I feel like. I hope I'm realizing this like correctly, but like I think that it's a group of people now that are like truly starting to like mastermind on this out in the open and like talk about our hobby that we have and like the things that make it great for us and our brand, and like to listen and to talk about that with so many people. That's why I'm pumped about Moth and why I love Ego Clash so much, because it is this group of people that actually know like what the hell is going on in this like world that I can relate to. And it feels so good to like have that space now. And so for where we've come from and what we've learned, like just figuring it out in the beginning, you know, as far as like growing and into the solventless like market, like where we can go from here. Like if we've gone from there to here, like,
oh yeah,
that's the limit.
Absolutely. Those, you know, community building events, friendly competitions like that, you know, that's how it all, you know, we humans, we need that community. We need that, you know, in-person interaction. And it's so great to get together with people that, you know, are like-minded and share the same interest. But Shell, I want to ask you specifically, because I think you have a really interesting perspective on seeing legalization in Colorado and in Michigan, and of course having friends throughout the states, in different states that have legalized. You know, what are your thoughts on how Michigan did overall?
Yeah, I
as
like
far as a state in cannabis legalization.
Well, I feel like Michigan did things like very different than Colorado. Colorado like started very small. Michigan waited a year until they opened any dispensaries, which I felt like was a really good start for them. I was like, people will get their things together, everything will be settled. A lot of licenses got bought up, and there's a lot of towns that don't have like ordinances for how many dispensaries there can be. So even in like Southwest Michigan, our little area, there's so many. And then every week I'm like, a different person owns this one and a different person owns this one. And like they keep switching like, or like selling. And then some of them will just be closed. So I'm not going to lie. I've been into 2 in Michigan since I've been out here. I personally feel like the idea of recreational, where you have a spot that you can go and you can trust, and you trust the bud tender, and you trust that it's been tested, and you trust all of these things. I think that people are losing their trust and faith for that process in Michigan. I think that there's been some pretty big hiccups that should have been fixed, and they're not. And I think that it's coming back to caregivers that were the ones that they trust, and we're the ones that they know that like we're reliable and can have the same consistency, because it's almost like who knows anymore, with like, because of the testing issues in Michigan. And I don't know 100% of what happened, but there's just a lot of what's the word, remediation happening. I'm not someone that owns a microwave, and so I don't really want to be someone that consumes cannabis that's gone through remediation. I
don't even own a microwave.
I don't want you to nuke anything that I'm consuming.
Yeah, that's something we deal with up here in Canada as well.
I think that there's a lot of room for improvement, because people are clearly loving and enjoying the recreational market. Like, it is clearly a good thing for society to have around. I just really think that there should be a better way to have people that they actually trust kind of take over, instead of giant corporations of people that really just are out to make money, and you can tell by their product. And it's kind of sad for those poor plants and the people that like are kind of getting duped when they buy something of that nature. So
you see an ability to for small recognizable brands like yourself to transition into the recreational space right now, or is right now not the time to do something like that?
I feel like there's so many parts about that I'm like, yeah, and then no. Like, there's so many like pros and cons about that, and I feel like Michigan has carved out a really nice space for caregivers in the moment, and I'm not really sure. I feel like this one might have a better answer for that one. He does.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's just a lot of barriers to entry now, and then once you do get in there, the prices on rec stuff here just, it's so hard to like compete. And we would have to like really rely on our brand name to be able to get the price that we would need to even operate. It's not something we haven't looked into, and like talk to even people about doing some sort of licensing deals or something like that. Could be a possibility, but it's just where the wholesale market is, because we wouldn't be owning our own dispensary. If we did like a micro and did something like that and could make that work, maybe. But where the wholesale rosin market is on the metric side of things, just it's intimidating to look at that and be like, yeah, I'm gonna enter that market.
And again, because of so much experience that we've had, where we've learned like that we just had to do it with the two of us. Like I have like,
and really like the name Organimelts came to be because of like our organic origins, like the way we came about. That's really what the name's more about than anything. And I just feel like we've gotten to this point in our life where we're pretty patient with letting things come to us and not forcing things, just from doing that too much, probably.
Yeah. You can't push
and
it.
So it's just kind of one of those things where we'll see what happens.
It's something that like I know I have to be careful with. It's a slippery slope when he and I decide that we want to do something, because the second that it's spoken out loud, we're doing it, and there's no stopping us. And that's just who we are as individuals. Like, both of us just have an idea, and we get to talk about it and like have a moment that we're just like, we can picture it and see it, and then it's done. So I always have to be really careful when I want something and I say it out loud, because you might just get it.
Yeah. I can tell you that legalization in Canada, they told every legacy brand that they needed to be shut down by the day of legalization, and that if they were operating after that day, there would be no value for their brand in the new legal market. And that was the biggest load of shit that
Wow.
they could ever feed, and they scared a lot of people into shutting brands down. And those
Yeah.
brands, the brands that did stay open and continue to build their network, are now worth a lot more to these legal companies that are struggling to identify with their consumer base.
Yeah. That's it too.
Yeah.
They're not in touch with the consumers at all, man. They don't know what they want, and they're just doing everything off of like data, numbers on a computer, like what's yielding,
for the first couple of years, I have a nursery up here in Canada in the legal space, and for the first couple of years of legalization, it was the top 10 strains on weed maps out of the US, basically data used out of California. And now, for the first 10 years, for the first 2 years, and now it's we want black market Canadian strains, recognized black market, like we want whatever the neighborhood is buying, we want, and we'll brand that. And it's like, oh man, at least they're getting closer to the source. So I mean, I think guys like yourselves and so many others that are on the show, just kind of doing your own thing, staying in your lane, building your consumer base, and building your brand brand awareness and brand recognition is be huge and pay off huge down the road.
Yeah,
I think that's something that like I even just realized more recently when someone approached us about like our brand and asking about something with it, and I was like, yeah, we are like a brand, and like to embody that like brand and like to be aware of like how we're portrayed. I really do think it all starts with like how we take care of like the plants in the beginning and how careful in particular you are like in the hash and wash room, and then like that really shows in like our art form, like in hash. And I just find it to be so much more like enduring, and it almost makes like, I don't know, it like it makes us like real people to like, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. You know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're saying.
People want to see people wants to see who's behind,
it lets people like relate
and
connect.
That hasn't been able to happen in only our industry. Every other industry that's happened, meet the maker behind your favorite product, no problem, that's very attainable. But only in recent years has that been happening in cannabis. And it's really important that people like yourselves, who are the true grassroots movement, get their stories out, connect with their consumers, and secure your lines of distribution and your consumers. Because if you don't, some fancy metallic corporate brand is going to snap up those consumers because they haven't been exposed to husband and wife teams like you guys. So I think it's super important to tell your stories and get your brand out there.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. This is fun.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap up, if you guys could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the Michigan licensing regime, medical program, down to an ordinance, down to whatever it is, what would you change?
Oh man,
you know what I would, honestly?
What?
The fact that you have to own the ground that you stand on, like for, you know what I mean?
Like, well, because banks won't loan.
So that is the one thing that like I just am like, really? So like you have to like own like the physical like property or the ground that your greenhouse is on, or like things of that nature,
because you can't work with banks for lending
a loan or anything of that nature. And so that part, I'm just like, man.
Yeah, because that's a huge barrier. That's like one of the biggest barriers, is the property. And it's like if you could lease property or mortgage property to do some sort of operation on it would really open the doors a lot more than
So if anyone wants to just hand me a hunk of land for $1, I'll take it.
There you go. You never know. Michigan, it's a bit insulated, especially in the caregiver section, somewhat like Maine. But overall, the North American industry, Canada, the U.S. is the cannabis industry is not in a great position, and it hasn't been for a bit of time. Do you feel as though that overall industry is facing some more hard times before things start getting brighter, or do you think that we're at that bottom and things are starting to improve?
I mean, I think it depends where you look, man. It's like I've heard a lot of people say like last year they've seen the cheapest weed they've ever seen and the most expensive, right?
Mhm.
So it's like the lows are probably going to keep getting lower, but that doesn't mean that the highs are getting any lower, right? So it's just like, I don't know. It's like any market, like it's expanding for sure. But that's what you get when you have an expanding market is higher highs and lower lows. So I think if you're focusing on the lows and stuff, then you might attract that. I don't know. But if you're putting your product in the right position, like it's still a good market. And I think it always will be, man. There's plenty more consumers coming into this space every day. And
I do think that like big, like the companies that are in it just for like the dollar, that is my only hope, is that they realize like, I can't just do this just to make money and not care about this plant. I hope they all just can't do it because the plant doesn't give back if you don't show it any love or respect. Like, I hope that those kinds of like big companies
see that or
start
something, or,
like,
yeah,
see it
I
and
don't
like
know.
become aware and like fizzle out. And the people that actually have like pride and joy and like care about this as like the medicinal, plant that it is. I
Yeah.
hope they all start rising up and everything balances out.
That's the hope. I mean, I can tell you, like, after the gold rush was over in Canada and all these white collar dudes had gotten their chunk of money, after saying that they bleed cannabis and that they'll be here for forever, they're now raising money to go mine rare minerals on meteorites.
Exactly.
They're never going on a space to a meteorite. They'll be on to the next thing before this takes off. So
yeah.
Yep.
And like that's fine. It's like this is obviously like a consumer, like it's like consumerism.
I think
that is what it is.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think a lot of the big money that's like just bleeding money out in these MSOs and like bigger operations are just going to get bored of this at some point and find the next gold rush, and that's when the market is going to open up for people like us. And I don't know. I mean, how much longer can that be? Until there's already companies shutting down.
Yeah.
That are feeling it, and it's like I'll stay in this market and let them feel that in the rec market, and then once it levels out and you can buy businesses for pennies on a dollar, then
when someone says this land is $1 and it's yours,
you're in.
So
what are the plans this year moving forward with Organimelts? Do you have specific goals in mind? Pheno hunts? What are your goals?
Gosh, we are always popping seeds. So we have a pheno hunt. So right now we're running a pheno that we found in 2-3 grows.
Couple grows ago, we had like a small light leak that caused like a branch of, it was like just one branch of this lemon cane number 1.
And I was like defoliating it one day, and I saw I hit the bottom of this leaf, and I saw the pollen go whoop, and then right over onto the Not-Mac pea plant right next to me. And I was like, I saw that. And then I kept going, and I looked through the plant, and it was like, that was it. And I was like, all right, tie string around this branch. And so we found these seeds in there.
There's
and it was
3 of them.
Yeah, it was the most beautiful, magical thing. So we popped them. Oh, I knocked over the tray 3 times. We popped the seeds. I knocked over the tray with the
little babies
3 times. And I lost the seed. And then I found it in the lemon cane pot. Remember that?
Yeah.
Anyways, this is the most random tangent.
I
generally
have
treat
some
my
of those
plants
going
very
on.
well, but I literally just happened to drop this one. Anyways, so we popped it, grew it out, and it's this beautiful lemon cane, Not-Mac peaches cross, and it is gorgeous and shorter than the Not-Mac peaches was real stringy and tall and lanky, and this one has the same bud structure where it's separated out, but it's growing shorter like our lemon cane, and it's greasy. This
Yeah.
is like the first week of flower, and it's greasy to the touch. I'm so excited.
That'll be a fun one. And then
Do
after
that
that,
one.
we have the next round is going to be more pheno hunts. We did
New York Sour Chem.
Yeah, New York Sour Chem, Sour
Sour
Runs,
and then
Wooksauce Wineries. Those beans from them.
it was
It's
it was like
Dosi Papaya, and then that's crossed to
it's Dosi Papaya, Stradana, and
Cookies and Cream.
Cookies and Cream.
So Cookies and Cream crossed to Stradana back cross, and then that crossed to Dosi Papaya from Wooksauce. And then we just popped
some more original
12,
diesel Dosi-Do.
Yeah, 12 more or 15 more original diesel crossed with Dosi-Do Femmes from Archives Expedition line.
And I didn't throw any of these seeds randomly all over my grow, I promise. I'll made it into their cups and very happy little homes.
That's awesome. You guys aren't playing around. That's some hot heat.
Yeah, so we like to keep popping stuff because like we don't bring cuts in, and people like new stuff all the time. I like new stuff all the time, you know. So
absolutely.
I know it's cool because we have in the past, like we had this amazing Tropicana cookies at one point in time, and like really good bud that I look back and I'm like, oh, remember the banana runs and this and that. But I won't keep it around forever. Like the second that people are kind of over it, or I'm overgrowing it, or like I want to try something new and I don't have room in my garden, like I'll make cuts and like get rid of things that just like aren't, you know, it anymore. And I kind of enjoy when people come up to me and they're like, what about the Vuelo? Like, what about this? And I'm like, I tried to pop more seeds, but like, I was like, they were males or like they were runs or this and that. I was like, that plant is just going to stay in the past in this beautiful memory of something that you had at one point in time. But everything else I put out was still fire. But I kind of love the idea that it was like, oh, man.
Yeah, there's those moments in time and those memories.
Yeah, because you remember like the summer that you had it, you know? I don't know.
What's different about Michigan cannabis than like cannabis anywhere else in the States, in your opinion?
Just like how strong the caregiver market is here. I mean, I guess I'm comparing here mostly to Colorado because that's where I have the most experience. But it's like, just the caregiver market and how strong it is here, especially in like the hash scene. There's very few rec side like hash and rosin that there's just, I don't know, most of the good stuff is done by caregivers here in that arena. But I was surprised how, I don't know, I just never really got into it as far as like a community in Colorado as I did here. Like it really is like a community. There's a lot of events. That's another, I think, unique thing to hear, at least. I don't know that I know of, or like the way that they have like these caregiver events and stuff. There's some swap meets and stuff where you can go and, there's a bunch of caregivers and stuff in one place and hanging out. And I don't know. There's just a good community built around that. And that's cool.
What advice do you have for people wanting to, get set up as a caregiver and follow in your footsteps?
Oh, man.
I would say just do it. Don't overthink it at first. Just go for it. Just because you got to start like failing to learn. Mm-hmm. So just start trying whatever you got to do, and you'll find your way. And like, just as long as you stick with it, you're going to figure it out. And then as far as like hash advice, like I said before, just be thorough and be clean. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Treat your plants with the same respect, and like really take care of them, It's like, I think it's so important to take care of your plant from like all the way through to the wash,
Yeah.
It's super
give it love.
You got to give it love.
It's super apparent you guys have so much love for the plant. It's like it bleeds through you guys. So I love that.
I know, huh? I guess
Anybody that you want to shout out that you didn't have a chance to while we were, going through your story, this is your chance. Open mic. Take it away.
Shout out MI Beneficials for sure.
Yeah.
Keeping us laced up with rose beetles.
Yep.
And all the beneficial insects.
And then
he
used
helped us out a lot.
Top dress from him too, the Benny Boost.
Yeah, helped us out a lot getting there transitioned over to soil. I appreciate that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Earthcraft and Earthstayer, those guys are not only like our very good friends, but literally keeping my grow just praying all the way to the end. Like they will just stand up on end all day long with their hands towards the lights. Like it's an absolutely amazing nutrient company and I'm all about it.
Shout out my mom.
the only person
she hung up on me when I called her the first time I got a job in Breckenridge at a dispensary. She hung up on me, and like me and my mom have a very close relationship, and that fucking hurt. I was like, "Whoa, she's actually pissed." What?
And then
she hung up on me, and now she's like helping us water. She's named all our plants in our greenhouse, put name tags on them.
She hung name tags in my plants of the names that she named was the cutest thing in the entire world.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So it's
shouts out to mom.
Yeah, she'll like show up and like she like actually helps. It's the cutest thing in the entire world.
She loves it now, so that's what's up. Shout out Postal Mitten for sure.
Yeah.
Always holding it down.
Straight
up. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, it was so great having you on. I really enjoyed. You guys are beautiful people. I hope to chop it up with you again. I mean, you're gonna be at Melting of the Head.
Yeah, we'll see you this month, man.
Bro,
okay. I really decided to, really go for it because I entered in my own blend or my own my own run this time.
That's awesome.
We've entered into competitions as Organimelts, and so this is the first one that's like Mrs. O's up there.
That's awesome. That's super cool. No, I'm so excited to have you guys.
Yeah, we're so stoked, man. I'm stoked for the food. I'm stoked for the hash. I'm stoked for the company.
I'm so excited to see good people. I'm pumped to see like Hannah. Mission Hill Melts is amazing. Like they're people that like in this world. You know what I mean? So
Adam doesn't make you smile, something's wrong with you. Adam is one of the sweetest men. And Hannah
and again, like a power couple that we can relate to, you know. Definitely. So I'm super excited for that event.
That's awesome. Well, again, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to have you back on. Thank you everybody for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There's still a few tickets left for Moth, so you can check that out on the website. And I hope you all have a very, very great day.